Workshop 3, Sharing Your Story. Welcome to the third and final hands-on workshop of the Murals Without Walls series. The third workshop has the theme of sharing your story. All three of our workshops have an overarching theme of the self, where we will explore who we are, celebrate and reflect on our own unique lived experience and expertise, and how we ultimately show up in our art-making process and production. This workshop is designed to get you thinking about how your work is unique to you and your story. It's about building confidence in your narrative, that is, talking about your work, whether that is through an artist statement and biography, or simply by spending time looking at your images and work. We'll consider ways to present your work so that you and your story can be present, even if you're not there in person beside it when other people get to experience it. If you're joining us after having participated in the first and/or second workshop, either live or recorded, welcome back. If you're starting with Workshop 3, that's cool too. If at any time you're unsure of the format, or I make reference to something that has you confused, you can always go back and check the recorded version of the introduction and the other workshops. There is no wrong or right way to follow these workshops. Workshop outline. Here is an outline of what we'll be doing. In our live workshop, we will do a check-in and share our favorite ways of making or crafting or sharing our ideas. You can share too by posting to the Discord server. Our first activity will be about sharing or showing our stories or experience. We will think about a picture or an icon or assemblage that represents ourselves. If you have a project or idea in mind, or are interested in applying for the Mural Festival opportunity, this might be the start of that project. We will make it using our drawing tools, paints, papers, or any tools we have available. This activity will be about 10 minutes, and the goal is to present the visual or piece without any words or framing text. Sharing is optional, but will be done silently or without speech or signs for all work that is visual. I will talk a little bit about working in a gallery and about when an object or artwork goes from being personal to public. I will talk about what happens when an object is on display and how an artist can be present in a presentation or public work without standing beside the object. There will be a 5-minute scheduled break. The second activity will be about generating and answering questions. We will continue to work on the image that we did in the first activity, or start something new, but we will slow down and start asking ourselves questions as we make. The goal is to think through and generate reasons for why we do a thing as we make. In the live workshop, we'll share some observations and some questions we answered together by chatting with our voice, signing through the interpreter, or sharing on the Discord channel if we feel like it. You are welcome to share your observations on Discord at any time, before, during, or after you experience this workshop. We may not have time in the live workshop to do this next part, so you get an added bonus by watching the recorded workshop video. The third and last part of the workshop will be about generating artist statements or project descriptions. I will provide you some steps and tips about how you can share your story in a way that is unique to you and your practice. Any remaining time in the workshop will be for chatting, sharing, asking questions, and posting to Discord. Tools and materials. Getting set up. For this workshop, I have spread out a few different materials on my art space. These include the materials that were available in the art kit to local artists who were able to pick it up in time, as well as a few other tools and materials I had in my space. I've been working primarily in black marker in this making series because the contrast works well when recording video, but I'm really enjoying the Conte pastels. Having the semi-moist watercolors here for quick colors is nice, but I prefer a thicker brush when applying color, so I have my own Chinese-style paintbrushes that I picked up in Chinatown in Vancouver. Whatever you're making with today is up to you. Whether you're using materials from the art kit, familiar tools that you always use when making, or you're trying something new and unexpected, keep in mind that anything we make today doesn't have to be for keeps. You might also be making digitally on a tablet or on a computer. That's great. If you're wanting to apply to the Mural Festival opportunity and you have a project in mind for what you'd like to do for your application, you could start working on a drawing or prototype artwork that might be something you get to create for the festival. However, even if you're thinking about applying to that project, the work you do in the live workshop or during the recorded workshop sessions doesn't have to be the project you ultimately submit or create. You can use the tools and warm-ups you learned in these sessions to inspire you as you create a work in the coming week. And if applying to the festival isn't something you're interested in, that's cool too. You have the freedom to play and try, but also to make a mistake or not necessarily make anything that's worth keeping. If you have any goals or expectations of creating something good or worth sharing with the group, that can put unnecessary pressure on you while you're making. If you decide to just watch the video or browse and read and look at things other participants post in the Discord server, that's really okay too. You're not slacking off. Taking time to observe other people being creative, to consider, and honestly, to fail at being productive, these are all tools and materials you can practice as an artist as well. There's always a lot of pressure to produce. So for today, even just for the next hour, I hope to create a space where you really feel like you're allowed to react, do, make, or be in whatever way works best for you. Let's be creative together, however that may manifest for you today. In the live workshop, we'll spend the first 15 minutes of the workshop checking in on day 3 and share our favorite way to be creative or to share our ideas. This could be painting. This could be through social media. This could be gardening. This could be telling stories to our nieces, nephews, or nibblings. This could be going for nature walks. Take a deep breath when you're ready, and then we'll get started on our first activity. You could also join the workshop-3-prototype channel on Discord and share your favorite ways of being creative there too. First activity. Our first activity will be about sharing and showing our stories or experiences in a visual way. Let's take a minute or two to think about how we could show ourselves or who we are in a picture to someone else. This doesn't need to be your face or body. It could be an object that is meaningful to you. If you were asked to grab something from your making space, or your studio, or your home, or storage, to share with the group, what would you pick up? You could draw or paint that. It could be your favorite place or landscape. If you were going to take a picture in your favorite place, where would it be? You could paint that or draw that. It could be shapes that represent your thoughts or emotions. If you were making an account on a social media platform, what would your profile picture look like? Would it be a picture of you? If you're still struggling to think of something, don't worry. We're going to take another minute to reflect together. Try letting your eyes wander around the space or across your body. Touch your clothing or your hair or your skin to remind yourself of being in your skin. If you have something in mind, excellent. If you couldn't come up with something, that's okay. For today, you could trace a body part. If you have a hand or arm you can trace, or if you can pull your paper under one of your legs or feet, then that's a pretty personal object or image you can create. If you're still struggling to come up with anything, that's okay too. Remember, we're practicing being okay with not producing anything. Feel free to post on Discord if nothing comes to mind. Writing and sharing is a way of being creative too. Okay, let's spend 5 minutes starting to make our image or icon or assemblage. 5 minutes isn't very long, so plan for a quick sketch or draft, getting down big ideas before going into details. Okay, if you haven't started, let's start now. That's 5 minutes. In the live workshop, we're going to start welcoming anyone who wants to share the start of their pictures, to turn on their camera and video, to hold up their picture at this point, or to take a photograph of their image and post it to Discord. However, we're not going to talk or sign or explain our pictures. It's looking only. If you want to share your image or picture on the Discord server, I encourage you to share without telling us anything about why you made your image or any context. You could maybe write "first activity" as an image caption if you want. This might be really frustrating because you may feel the need to explain or share words with your drawing to help people understand what they're looking at. This is a real frustration for many artists and creators. It can be difficult to share your work and let your work stand on its own, especially if it's personal. As we move into the next part of the workshop, where I'm going to share a little bit about working in the arts, you are welcome to continue working on your image. We're going to continue to work on this image in our second activity too. From studio to gallery. How we present our work and where we present our art making isn't always top of mind when we're making in our studio space. Over the past decade, I have worked in a few different galleries as a preparator or art handler. This means I've done everything from unpacking and packing artworks for travel, hanging artworks in the walls or from ceilings, pasting posters to windows, applying vinyl letters to strange surfaces, and building structures or rooms to house these artworks for all kinds of artists at different career stages and across disciplines. There are some artists who do have their audiences and the people who will come see their work or specific presentation details in mind. But for many career artists, their work moves from gallery to gallery, and each location may have its own restrictions or quirks that weren't considered when the artist was making. You don't always get to choose where your work will be presented, which can mean that the location where your work is displayed may create a context that you hadn't considered when you were working on your piece in your studio. This is one reason why gallery walls and plinths or stands tend to be white, so that they can be as basic and plain as possible, so as not to take away from or add information to the work. It's also why some traveling shows specifically request the walls to be painted to force the space to better suit the artwork that is being displayed. There's also an interesting thing that happens when someone takes an artwork from a studio into a gallery or presenting space. It goes from being a part of an artist to being an extension of an artist. While the artwork is in the possession of the artist, anything from a smudge or the falling ash of their cigarette is still part of the artist's narrative. If they make the mark or damage the piece, it's part of the piece's story in the hands of the artist. But once the piece is lent or rented or sold to a presenting space, anything that happens to the artwork is done to the piece. It's inflicted and forced onto the piece because it wasn't intentional, and it might artificially change the story or narrative from the one the artist had intended. However, this is part of the vulnerability and bravery of being an artist that shows work in public. When we share our images as a mural, for example, painted on the side of a public building, we both get to project ourselves out into the world, while also running the risk that someone else might edit or modify our stories, even unintentionally due to someone parking a dumpster in front of it, or intentionally tagging the wall with graffiti. This is an emotional thing, but there are steps we can take as artists before we share our work and ideas outside of the studio that can help create a narrative that is so strong and essential to the work that the message can be understood regardless of what happens to it as it exists on its own in the world. One of the steps we can take is taking breaks and making time for ourselves so we can be present and mindful while we make. Let's take our scheduled 5-minute break now. You could also keep drawing and working on your image or picture from the first activity if you wanted. You could pause the video or make through this break. It's up to you. You're the artist. Second activity. In the next activity, we're going to start practicing putting some light stress on our stories while safely in our studio and making spaces. We're going to start producing diamonds by putting pressure on our prototypes. What I mean by that is we're going to start asking ourselves questions about the decisions and about why we do certain things when we're making. We're still going to practice care with ourselves by being open to not having an answer right away and putting aside more difficult questions as we build a foundation. But this activity is designed to build your confidence around your excellent mark making and creative practices. This is a thinking activity. Using the image that we started in the first activity, let's start asking and answering some questions. If you just want to keep making while you listen, or pause the video so you can focus and watch, or read the captions and transcripts after, that's just fine too. Not everyone can make and listen at the same time. I'm going to ask us a question about our drawings or images, and then pause for about a minute after each question. Here's an example. Look at your drawing. What art tool did you use and why? This answer could be something simple like, it's what I had closest to me, or I liked the color, or it's the easiest tool for me to hold, or I have never tried using this before. Your answer could also be, I don't know, and that's totally okay. We're practicing together. It's a workshop, so you don't have to have all the answers. But what's fun and interesting about doing this activity is that you might identify some things that are really important about yourself and the reason why you do certain things when you're making. Let's spend a minute thinking about this question. Why did we use this art tool? Okay, that's a minute. Hold on to your answer. We'll come back to it. Here's the next question. Why did I choose this art surface? Okay, last question for now. How does this picture represent me? Well done! There are lots of questions you could ask yourself about art making, and what we are practicing here is being intentional. It's about thinking through the reasons why we do a thing or choose a subject. Let's do another round with the same questions, but this time let's answer our questions by making. For example, our first question was, what art tool did we use and why? Let's answer our question by using another tool. It could be a tool that we don't use very often, or maybe we've never used before. It could be a tool we normally use. Let's either add to our current drawing or do a separate version of the same drawing using this different tool. Let's take 5 minutes to do this. You could answer the question by trying a few different tools and eliminating them as ones that you wouldn't want to make with. By choosing the art materials you don't want to work with, you're answering what tools you do want to work with. Let's start making. Great. Let's move on to the next question. Why did I choose this art surface? Look at your available surfaces. If you're using the art kit, you have a few different pieces of paper to choose from. If you're making using your own supplies, do you have access to a different kind of paper or material? If not, you could also try changing the surface on which you're making. You could move a piece of paper onto a hardcover book. You could hold it against a wall. You could crumple a piece of paper and add texture. If you're planning to apply for the Mural Festival, you might choose to draw a wall and answer this question with, because I don't have a wall to practice on, or start planning my image, so I'm planning with this paper. Let's take 5 minutes to answer this question by making. You could choose a different surface, or you could keep making on the same piece of paper if you know why you would or wouldn't choose another specific art surface. Let's make. Good job. Let's try our last question. How does this picture represent me? Here's a few ways you could stress test this question in making. What could you add to make this picture or image more unique to you, your story, or lived experience? What could you remove to make this picture less generic or more unique to you? Crossing something out while we practice making is totally okay. Are there colors or textures or gestures that you could add that have a specific meaning to you? Let's take another 5 minutes using any of the images you've generated through this activity and try to answer the question, how does this image represent me? Doing this activity with drafts and prototypes can really help you solidify and strengthen your ideas before you commit to a final project or make something for a presenting space. For work that you plan to share with the public, the more of the questions you ask yourself and that you can confidently answer, the more you'll find that you can be present in your work even if you're not there to explain it or provide context. The reason for this is that you're being intentional about your decisions. And with each decision, you're making your work more personal and more unique to you. If you learn something about why you choose to do something when you make and create, I encourage you to share it in the Discord channel. Depending on how much sharing the live workshop wishes to participate in, we will probably not get to the third activity in our hour and a half of making. But spending time questioning why we do things when we make can help us build a stronger artist statement or project description, which is something you usually have to supply when you start sharing your artwork publicly. I kind of consider the second activity and this next section to be like a part A and part B of crafting your artist statement. So if you want to pause here and explore deeper into the how and why of your making, or just keep exploring your materials, then I absolutely encourage you to do that. Crafting your artist statement. The last part of our workshop is designed to help you craft your artist statements. If you already have an artist statement, that's great. I encourage you to share it with people on the Discord channel, #workshops3projects and your practice. An artist statement is a sentence that is usually posted or shared beside your artwork or on a website. It answers the question, why does this artist do what they do when they make art? In my artist career, my artist statement has changed several times. In the past 7 or 8 years, it's been a word or two that has changed. But I don't think there's been a year that I haven't edited the text on my website in some way. That's because my artist practice is always changing. And it's called a practice because we're learning and growing as artists and people all the time. Our bodies, abilities, experiences, access to materials and ideas, the land we occupy. These things can change and influence how we see and navigate the world. An artist statement answers the questions of what, why, and how. This is why I consider this more formal part of the workshop to be like a part B to the second activity. You couldn't answer these questions without making and trying and doing. It has to do with how you approach making and being creative. Why you choose a subject or image. Why you chose your materials. What questions are you trying to answer or ask your audience? Or how are you contributing to a larger dialogue or discourse that is happening in your community or among your other creative friends and the larger artist community? And so that can seem really big and daunting because they're usually very polished sentences. They can sound academic or use a lot of art speak. They can make artists seem untouchable because of how put together these artist statements are. And sometimes that's a good thing. Remember when I was talking about vulnerability when you bring your artwork out in public? The more confident you are and the more answers you have to the questions, why do you do what you do when you make artwork? The more art armor you have. You can answer those questions with confidence. Here are ways you could start thinking through an artist statement. You don't have to write anything down if you don't want to. You could just listen and think. You could practice signing these sentences in the mirror. Or you could draw some notes. Try making one sentence that describes what you do, that maybe no one else does, or something that makes you unique. This could be your experience, history, or perspective in the world. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be making something in a really unique way, but rather it could describe how you see or move through the world, where you grew up, the people that you have met, the access to tools that you have had access to. The combination and order of these things is unique to you. Here's an example of an artist statement. I paint scenes from my childhood growing up near Squamish. That's it. That could be your artist statement. It says what you do. You paint specific things, and you grew up in this place. Or it could be, I make collage using discarded candy wrappers from the sweet shop that I have been volunteering at for the past 15 years. So you're explaining what materials you use and why they're relevant to you. You had access to them. You were working in the shop. Another way you could approach it is to try writing one sentence that describes why you do your artwork. It could be the reason why you chose to use one medium over another, or it could be why you are called to make the things you do. So for example, I paint watercolor because my grandmother taught me as a child, and I am honoring and remembering her as I paint. Or, I photograph scenes in my neighborhood to contrast the ever-present gentrification and industry with the people who continue to live and thrive there. The second one uses some bigger words, but if the reason you are photographing your neighborhood is because they keep knocking down older buildings where people are living and then kicking them out onto the street to make a profit and build new buildings that they can sell for more money, that's gentrification. And so your artist statement uses a bigger word. But it's just as valid to say, I photograph scenes in my neighborhood to remember the people who used to live here before they were kicked out by new buildings and businesses so that they can make more money. The last recommendation that I have is try writing either or both of these sentences in the third person, or using your name instead of the word I. If you were to hear these sentences spoken by somebody else, do they feel true? For example, I take pictures and post them on Instagram to start discussions with people about ableism. That becomes, Kay Slater takes pictures and posts them to Instagram to start discussion with people about ableism. Does that sound true? Then great, you've completed an artist statement. If you hear that sentence, especially with your name in the third person, and go, no, that's not really what I do, you can try again. Or if it feels really generic, or like you could swap out anyone's name with your artist statement, you might want to add a detail that helps explain why you do the things you do. Here's one last example. I paint cats. Kay Slater paints cats. Okay, it might be true, but I could switch the name Kay Slater for Paul Smith, which is a made-up name, and it could be absolutely true. But if I changed it to, I paint cats because I like how they look when they are sleeping. I hang them up where I sleep because looking at them makes me feel sleepy too. This answers the question, what do you do as an artist, and why do you do what you do? It's pretty darn unique too. I hope I have demonstrated or shown why asking questions of yourself when you make and during the early stages of an art project can help you build your confidence, help you create more unique and personal images, and develop your artist statements. Thank you, and final thoughts. The last thing I want to leave you with as I finish recording this last workshop in our series together is that art making for the sake of making art is really rewarding too. It doesn't always have to be about an answer or it doesn't have to be about a serious answer. Sometimes the answer is because I want to make something, or because I feel like drawing. This is a great reason to make a mark and try something. There is a time to be intentional and formal when we're considering our art, but playing, trying, and having fun and getting messy and being surprised is such an important and glorious part of being creative. I hope you get a chance to find joy in your studio too. Thank you for joining us for this third process-based workshop in the Mural Without Walls series. If you want to keep making, we encourage you to do that. These workshops are a starting point for you, and if you've got lots of ideas, then that's great. You could also replay any of these workshops again to help you generate a new idea from scratch. But don't forget to take breaks and be kind to yourself, especially after an intense session of asking yourself questions. If you wanted to share anything you learned, experienced, struggled with, or created with other participants in this workshop series, or with me, you can post to the Discord server before, during, or after the workshop series. You could also email Wendy Oberlander, the project lead and creator, woberlander@gmail.com, Kate Blake, the project coordinator and support person at Kickstart Disability Arts and Culture, at kate@kickstartdisability.ca, or me at k@k.ca. This wraps up the Hands-On Making Workshop series with me. For more information about the next phase of the Murals Without Wall project and crafting an application to the Vancouver Mural Festival, check your email addresses as you'll be receiving some information about dates and times for this phase from Kickstart Disability Arts and Culture and Wendy Oberlander. Thanks again for making with me.